The term New World Order gets thrown around a lot, and, it's often dismissed by the mainstream media as a silly conspiracy theory. But what is it, really? Put simply, the New World Order is a plan. It's a secretive effort by a powerful and wealthy elite to eventually create a one-world government. Now, this isn't about countries working together peacefully. It's about erasing national borders and individual freedoms to establish a single global authority. Imagine a world where every major decision, from what you can say to how you live your life, is made by an unelected group of globalists who believe they know what's best for everyone. This is the ultimate goal they have been working towards for decades, slowly and methodically. This proposed global government wouldn't be a democracy. It would be a technocratic dictatorship, run by so-called experts, international bankers, and corporate leaders who operate above the law of any single nation. They want to replace national sovereignty with global governance. Think of it like a pyramid. At the very top, you have a tiny cabal of immensely powerful individuals. Below them are international organizations like the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and the World Health Organization. These bodies create the policies and regulations that national governments are then pressured to adopt, slowly chipping away at their independence until there is nothing left but a shell. The agenda is pushed under deceptive labels like global cooperation, sustainable development, and international security. They tell you it's about solving climate change or preventing pandemics, but the real objective is control. They want centralized control over the economy through a single digital currency, control over information by censoring dissenting voices, and control over people through mass surveillance. They believe that the average person is too incompetent to govern themselves and that a hand-picked elite must steer humanity's future. This is a profoundly anti-democratic and anti-American ideology that views individual liberty as an obstacle to their grand design. And honestly, this isn't just a wild theory anymore. You can hear politicians and global leaders openly using the phrase New World Order or talking about the need for a great reset. They are no longer hiding their intentions as carefully as they once did. They are becoming bolder because they believe they are close to achieving their goals. The plan involves weakening strong, independent nations like the United States from within, through cultural division, economic instability, and political chaos. By creating problems, they can then offer their pre-planned solution, a new international system where they hold all the power. It's the oldest trick in the book. So who are these shadowy figures supposedly orchestrating this global takeover? The list of suspects is, well, a who's who of the world's most powerful and influential people. At the top of the list are dynastic banking families like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, who have amassed unimaginable wealth over generations. These families have allegedly used their financial power to influence governments, fund wars, and shape the global economy to their benefit. Their goal isn't just to be rich, it's to use that wealth to build a system where they are the permanent ruling class, a financial aristocracy that answers to no one. Beyond the banking dynasties, you have secretive groups and elite clubs where these plans are discussed and coordinated. The Bilderberg Group is a prime example. Every year, about 130 of the world's most powerful politicians, CEOs, media moguls, and academics meet in total secrecy. The official line is that it's just an informal discussion forum, but a lot of people believe it's where the globalist agenda for the coming year is decided, far from public scrutiny. Then there's the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, think tanks founded by figures like David Rockefeller, which have had members in nearly every United States presidential administration for the last century. Let's not forget the more public-facing organizations that carry out the agenda. The World Economic Forum, led by Klaus Schwab, is perhaps the most brazen of them all. Schwab openly wrote a book called COVID-19, The Great Reset, where he described the pandemic as a golden opportunity to restructure the world's economies and societies. His famous line, "You will own nothing, and you will be happy," isn't a prediction, it's a mission statement. The World Economic Forum grooms future world leaders through its Young Global Leaders program, placing its loyalists in key positions of power in governments and corporations around the world to ensure their vision is implemented. Finally, you have the intelligence agencies and their deep state networks. These organizations operate in the shadows with vast resources and little to no oversight. They have the capability to monitor communications, manipulate public opinion, and even topple governments that stand in the way of the globalist agenda. These agencies often work hand in hand with the corporate media and big tech companies to control the flow of information, censoring narratives that challenge the official story, and promoting propaganda that serves their interests. It's a complex web of power, but all the threads lead back to the same goal: a world controlled by a select few. Why would anyone want this level of control? The answer is simple, yet chilling. They believe they are superior. The globalist elite see themselves as the rightful shepherds of humanity. They view the masses, that's you and me, as a herd that needs to be managed for its own good and for the good of the planet. They believe that concepts like national pride, individual freedom, and traditional values are outdated and dangerous relics that lead to war and destruction. In their minds, the only path to a stable and sustainable future is to eliminate these variables and place all power into their own enlightened hands. It's a God complex on a global scale. Another major reason is resource management. The world has finite resources, and the elite want to be the ones who decide how they are distributed. This isn't about fairness. It's about securing their own power and lifestyle indefinitely. By controlling the world's food supply, energy sources, and water, they can control the population. A centralized global government would allow them to implement radical policies like population control, something that has been openly discussed in these elite circles for decades. They could dictate who gets to have children, where people are allowed to live, and what they are allowed to consume, all under the guise of saving the planet. Economic dominance is also a core motivator. The current system of competing national economies is messy and unpredictable for those at the top. A one-world government would come with a one-world digital currency, controlled by a single central bank. This would give them the ultimate tool for social control. They could track every single transaction you make. If you step out of line, say or do something they don't like, they could simply turn off your ability to buy or sell. Dissent would become impossible when your very survival is tied to your compliance with the system. This is the end of economic freedom and the beginning of a digital prison. Ultimately, the drive for a new world order is about creating a permanent, inescapable system of power. In the current world, power can shift. Revolutions can happen, elections can change leaders, and nations can rise and fall. The elites despise this instability. Their goal is to create a global feudal system, a technocratic neo-feudalism where they are the lords and the rest of humanity are the serfs. It's an end to history as we know it, a final state where their power is absolute and forever. They aren't just trying to win the game, they are trying to lock the board in place so that no one else can ever play again. Believers in the New World Order point to a trail of clues they say are hidden in plain sight, embedded in our culture, architecture, and even our currency. The most famous example is the back of the United States $1 bill. It features the Great Seal of the United States, which includes a pyramid with an unfinished top, capped by the Eye of Providence, or the All-Seeing Eye. Below it is the Latin phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum, which translates to New Order of the Ages. For many, this isn't just a historical symbol, it's a blatant declaration of the plan to establish a new world order, placed on the world's most circulated currency as a symbol of their power. This symbolism isn't confined to money. You can find similar imagery in corporate logos, government buildings, and major monuments around the world. The all-seeing eye, obelisks, and pyramid shapes appear with suspicious frequency, often linked to organizations with immense power. Think about the Washington Monument, which is a giant Egyptian obelisk, a symbol of power often associated with Freemasonry. Or consider the strange and unsettling murals at the Denver International Airport, which depict scenes of war, death, and a one-world government bringing peace after a global apocalypse. Proponents argue these aren't coincidences. They are messages from the elite to each other. The language used by world leaders also provides a lot of fuel for this theory. Presidents and prime ministers have been openly calling for a new world order for decades. George H.W. Bush famously used the phrase in a speech to Congress in 1991, describing the post-Cold War world as an opportunity to build a new system of global governance under the direction of the United Nations. Since then, leaders from Bill Clinton to Gordon Brown to Joe Biden have all used similar language, speaking of the need for a new international order to tackle global challenges. Skeptics call this standard political rhetoric, but others hear a coordinated script. Even in popular culture, the themes of the New World Order are everywhere. Movies, TV shows, and video games are filled with storylines about dystopian futures ruled by totalitarian governments, mass surveillance, and a loss of individuality. Some argue this is predictive programming, a way to slowly introduce these ideas to the public to make them seem normal or inevitable. By repeatedly showing us these scenarios as entertainment, they desensitize us to the real-world erosion of our freedoms. When the real thing happens, it won't feel so shocking because we've already seen it 100 times on a screen. It's a subtle but powerful form of psychological conditioning. Of course, there is a powerful counter-argument to all of this. Skeptics and mainstream sources dismiss the New World Order as a classic conspiracy theory, a paranoid fantasy with no basis in reality. They argue that the world is far too complex and chaotic for any single group to control. I mean, how could a secret cabal possibly manage the competing interests of over 200 nations, countless corporations, and billions of independent-minded people? They contend that what believers see as a coordinated plot is actually just the messy, uncoordinated, and often clumsy process of international politics and economics. It's chaos, not conspiracy. Furthermore, skeptics say that the so-called evidence is based on misinterpretations and connecting unrelated dots. The phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum on the dollar bill, for instance, was chosen by the Founding Fathers in 1782 and refers to the beginning of a new American era, not a future global government. The symbols like the all-seeing eye were common religious and philosophical symbols of the time, representing divine providence, not a sinister secret society. Skeptics argue that theorists are guilty of confirmation bias. They are actively looking for evidence to support their beliefs while ignoring anything that contradicts them, turning coincidences into proof of a master plan. The argument continues that the secretive meetings of groups like Bilderberg are not where a global agenda is set. Instead, they are simply private networking events for powerful people, similar to many other high-level conferences. The lack of transparency is to allow for frank and open discussion without the pressure of media scrutiny, not to plot a global takeover. Likewise, organizations like the Council on Foreign Relations are just influential foreign policy think tanks that publish research and make recommendations. Their influence comes from the quality of their ideas and their members' positions, not from a secret conspiracy to undermine national sovereignty. Finally, critics of the theory argue that it serves as a dangerous scapegoat. By blaming a shadowy, all-powerful them, we avoid confronting the real, complex, and often mundane causes of the world's problems. It's easier to blame the Illuminati for economic inequality than to analyze the intricate details of tax policy, trade agreements, and technological disruption. The theory, they say, promotes a sense of powerlessness and paranoia, discouraging people from engaging in real-world political action. It simplifies complex issues into a good versus evil narrative that, while compelling, distracts from the genuine, non-conspiratorial challenges we face as a society. To understand the New World Order theory, you have to look at the institutions that proponents believe are the key players in its implementation. The United Nations is often seen as the foundation for a future one-world government. While it was publicly created to promote peace and prevent future wars, many believe its true purpose is to slowly accumulate power and authority over member states. Through treaties, resolutions, and programs like Agenda 21, now Agenda 2030, the UN introduces policies on everything from climate change to property rights, which gradually erode national sovereignty and hand control over to an international bureaucracy. Another critical piece of the puzzle is the system of international finance, centered around the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. These organizations were created after World War II to stabilize the global economy. However, critics argue that they have become tools of economic control. They offer loans to developing nations in crisis, but these loans come with strict conditions, known as structural adjustment programs, that often require countries to privatize state-owned industries, cut public spending, and open their markets to foreign corporations. This process, it's argued, traps nations in debt and makes them subservient to the global financial elite. The creation of supranational blocs like the European Union is seen as a major step in the playbook. The EU started as a simple free trade agreement and has evolved into a powerful political entity with its own currency, parliament, and court system that can overrule the laws of its member nations. For proponents of the New World Order theory, the EU is a template, a regional pilot program for a global government. The goal is to create similar unions in North America and Asia, which can then be merged into a single global entity. The quiet attempts to create a North American union via agreements like NAFTA are often cited as evidence of this ongoing project. More recently, the World Economic Forum has taken center stage. As mentioned, its Great Reset initiative, launched during the COVID-19 pandemic, laid out a clear vision for transforming the world. This isn't a secret, they published their plans for everyone to see. The WEF promotes public-private partnerships, which essentially means merging corporate power with government power, creating a system where huge multinational corporations have a direct role in setting public policy. This is the definition of technocratic fascism, where decisions are made not by elected representatives, but by a coalition of corporate and government stakeholders who are accountable to no one but themselves. The corporate mainstream media plays an absolutely critical role in the debate over the New World Order. Proponents of the theory argue that the media is not an independent watchdog, but rather the propaganda arm of the globalist elite. They point to the fact that a tiny number of massive corporations own almost all of the major news outlets, television networks, and publishing houses. This concentration of ownership allows the elite to control the narrative, ensuring that the information people receive supports their agenda. Any story, journalist, or expert who challenges the official line is ignored, ridiculed, or aggressively deplatformed. This process is often called manufacturing consent. The media doesn't have to tell you what to think directly, it just has to tell you what to think about. By constantly bombarding the public with certain topics, like climate change, pandemics, or international crises, while completely ignoring others, like the secret Bilderberg meetings or the Federal Reserve's influence, they shape public perception and priorities. They create a consensus view of reality that makes the globalist agenda seem like the only logical solution to the problems they have highlighted. Dissenting views are labeled as misinformation or conspiracy theories to discredit them without any actual debate. Think about how the media treats anyone who questions the official narrative on major events. They are immediately labeled with a variety of dismissive terms. This is a tactic to shut down discussion and paint the questioner as mentally unstable or malicious. The media creates a hostile environment for critical thought, encouraging people to self-censor out of fear of being ostracized. They act as gatekeepers of acceptable opinion, and their primary function, according to this view, is to protect the powerful from scrutiny and to guide the public toward accepting policies they would otherwise resist, like digital IDs, central bank digital currencies, or endless foreign wars. On the other hand, journalists and media executives would argue that they are simply doing their job, reporting the facts as they see them. They would say that the reason they don't cover conspiracy theories is that there is no credible evidence to support them. They trust official sources, government agencies, academic experts, and international organizations because those are the established authorities. From their perspective, giving airtime to theories about a secret global cabal would be irresponsible journalism. The challenge for the average person is to determine whether the media is a trustworthy filter of information or a biased filter designed to protect a powerful establishment. Navigating this topic requires a healthy dose of critical thinking. It's easy to fall down a rabbit hole of theories or to blindly accept the mainstream dismissal of everything. The first step is to question everything, including what you're reading right now. Don't automatically accept any single source of information as the absolute truth. Instead, learn to consume information from a wide variety of sources, especially from those you don't necessarily agree with. Compare the narratives. Look at who is reporting a story, who owns that media outlet, and what their potential biases might be. Follow the money and the power. A key skill is to learn the difference between evidence and speculation. Evidence is a verifiable fact. A direct quote, a declassified document, an official video. Speculation is an interpretation of that fact, connecting it to a larger unproven plot. For example, George H.W. Bush's New World Order speech is evidence. It happened. Claiming that this speech is definitive proof of a secret plot with the Illuminati is speculation. It's important to build your understanding on a foundation of solid evidence while being aware of where the speculation begins. Don't be afraid to say, "This is interesting, but it's not proven." Pay attention to logical fallacies and propaganda techniques. When someone attacks the person making an argument instead of the argument itself, ad hominem, that's a red flag. When they create a simplified, easy-to-refute version of an opposing view, straw man, that's a red flag. When they claim something is true because an authority figure said so, appeal to authority, or because everyone believes it, bandwagon, be skeptical. The media and political figures use these tactics all the time. Learning to recognize them is like having a shield that protects your mind from manipulation, allowing you to focus on the substance of the issue. Finally, maintain a rational and balanced perspective. The world is a complex place, and it's unlikely that one single theory can explain everything perfectly. It's possible that some aspects of the New World Order theory are true, that powerful people do conspire to increase their wealth and influence, while other parts are exaggerated. The truth is likely somewhere in the messy middle, not at the extremes. Avoid falling into paranoia or fear. The goal of research is not to become terrified, but to become informed. An informed and engaged citizenry is the greatest defense against any form of tyranny, whether it's real or imagined. So, what should you do with this information? The most important thing is not to be a passive consumer. You are living in the middle of an information war, where governments, corporations, and other powerful groups are constantly competing to shape your perception of reality. Your first responsibility is to yourself and your family. Become as informed as possible. Dedicate time to reading books, watching documentaries, and listening to voices from outside the mainstream. Don't just rely on social media feeds or cable news headlines for your understanding of the world. Do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Once you are informed, the next step is to speak up. Share what you have learned with your friends, family, and community, but do so in a calm and rational way. Shouting about conspiracies will only get you tuned out. Instead, learn to ask probing questions that make people think. For example, instead of saying, "The WEF is evil," you could ask, "Have you heard about the World Economic Forum's Great Reset? What do you think about their idea that you'll own nothing and be happy?" This opens a conversation instead of starting a fight, allowing you to plant seeds of curiosity in others. Support independent media and content creators who are brave enough to tackle these subjects. In a world where big tech and corporate media are trying to silence dissenting voices, supporting independent journalists is more important than ever. This can be done through subscriptions, donations, or simply by sharing their work to help them break through the censorship and reach a wider audience. By doing so, you are helping to build a parallel information ecosystem that can challenge the monopoly of the mainstream narrative and keep the powerful in check. Every view, like, and share makes a difference in this battle. Most importantly, focus on what you can control. Don't become overwhelmed by the scale of the potential problems. Focus on strengthening your own life and your local community. Become more self-reliant. Support local businesses instead of multinational corporations. Get involved in local politics, like your school board or city council, where you can have a real and immediate impact. A strong, independent, and connected community is the greatest bulwark against any top-down authoritarian agenda. The New World Order, if it exists, relies on a population that is divided, dependent, and demoralized. The antidote is to be united, self-sufficient, and courageous.